what you can learn from the little engine that could, and the one thing that you want to not hold off on in your business today on Brand Tales.
Brand Tales, all your brand tales. Listen to how the greatest brands came to be.
Hey there, and welcome to Brand Tales. This is your host, Holly Chantel, and I am so glad to see you. We have been going strong for the last couple weeks with some amazing stories behind the coaching industry's greatest brands, and I hope that you've been enjoying them. If you have not subscribed yet, make sure that you subscribe on either iTunes, Stitcher, or here on the blog to make sure that you don't miss a thing. We post the resources at the end. You can leave your comments, and I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review on iTunes so that we can get more word out and so that we can see what you're thinking about the show. Today I have a very special guest. His name is Lachlan Cotter, and he's going to tell us the brand tale behind Satori app, which is an application for coaches to help them manage their schedules, book clients, have clients sign their contracts, basically manage every aspect of your coaching relationship. And it really streamlines things. It incorporates a lot of different features from different apps that you might be using into one really streamlined interface that clears away a lot of the clutter and some of those back and forth emails for coaches so that you can really focus on your true genius. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk to Lachlan about the story behind Satori. I didn't even mean to make that rhyme. Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to meet you for the first time. We've kind of chatted a few times and that kind of thing, but this is the first time I've actually seen you, which is really cool.
Yeah, thanks a bunch for inviting me on. I don't do this sort of thing very much, so that's nice.
Yeah, that's true, and I feel very, very honored for that. And just so everyone knows, the reason why it's so dark there is because Lachlan lives in Thailand, and right there, what time is it?
It's 10 p.m. in Bangkok.
Okay, so that's why it's dark in the room. But he was very gracious enough to stay up late enough to talk to me, and I appreciate that. So Lachlan is the founder of Satori, and what I'd love to know from you, Lachlan, is why you started this company.
Why I started Satori? That's like there's a journey to get there, and it's not like a thunderbolt of clarity or anything. It's like this meandering thing through a lot of personal stuff and noise, and changing life paths and that kind of thing. But yeah, basically, before I was doing this, I was just doing a more sort of, I had a job once upon a time, and then for a while I was kind of just doing freelance. I was doing software development on a freelance basis or a contract basis and that kind of thing. And I just got to a point, although I really have a deep background with that, I really sort of love that technical stuff, and I love that world, but just the work was it was getting to be draining. It was getting to be I was not aligned with that anymore, and I was feeling that for a long time I'd kind of just been living life based on a lot of responsibility and things the path I should be walking and that kind of thing, but it was not kind of in the direction that I really wanted to go in. And for a long time, I sort of always had I thought of myself, ultimately I would be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be captain of my own ship. I wanted to kind of, do something creative and kind of have that sort of creative direction, but that always seemed to be something in the future. Right. Something that I would get to eventually. And there was all this other stuff that I had to do first before I could get to there. But I didn't actually have a clear picture of how that works. What's the path from here to there? That was just sort of this vague story that I had going that, that's a someday thing.
Right.
But eventually that just got to kind of really sort of eat away at me, I think. And you kind of, there was this growing sense of if not now, when is that going to happen? You make the decision now, or I don't see it getting any easier to make, in the future, where
So what was
how are
that
you kind of
tipping
getting
point?
closer to that?
What was that tipping point that said now is the time?
It was just, I think it was, I guess, a lot of things kind of intersecting perhaps, but ultimately the big thing is just, it gets unbearable not to do it. There's a point where you kind of just go, well,
Right.
like, you have to sort of just sort of step up a little bit and kind of, take that leap, because to not do that is just feels horrible.
Right. And why Satori? Like what gave you the idea for this type of software for coaches?
Because like throughout that whole sort of transition period, I didn't go straight from, into this idea immediately. I had this period of kind of knowing I wanted to do something different, but not knowing what that was, and trying a lot of different stuff. And I got involved in blogging and sort of like the online community around like, I guess, travel blogging and lifestyle or personal development blogging. And I kind of just developed a network around that sort of world. And there were a lot of coaches
Mm-hmm.
in that space who I started to connect with. And I hired a coach. I worked with a coach for a whole year, just on my stuff and what I was doing and kind of what direction I wanted to go in. And just through that process of like working with a coach and having this network of like coaches around, I got like really involved in that sort of like the power of coaching, and wanted to do things in that space. And then just kind of things intersected. And so
Mm-hmm.
Satori came out of that.
Awesome. And so I'm really curious what the name Satori means.
So that word Satori comes, I believe, from like the Japanese Buddhist tradition, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of means enlightenment or clarity, or this sort of pure mental space
Mm-hmm.
without distractions. And so kind of I chose that as the name for the company and for what we do, because I kind of wanted something that captured that idea of like just having this clear space for like the creative flow, and taking away things that distract from that, and taking away the minutiae, taking away all the inessential details that kind of distract you from the best, most important work. So that kind of creative flow, Satori.
I love that. That makes
Yeah.
total sense. Knowing the software, that it really does clear up a lot of the back and forth, a lot of the clutter that goes on with running a coaching business. That it saves you from having to outsource it and is a lot less expensive. Plus, you get to like really customize everything to how you run your business. So that name now really makes a lot of sense. So tell me, what was your vision when you created Satori? Like, what was your dream, and has it changed as you've grown your business?
Yeah, it has changed quite a lot recently, like in the last year, because I think like the initial goal and vision it was pretty small. It was just to um, create something that was successful enough that I didn't have to do what I was doing before,
Hmm.
that I could just like have my own thing, and I could just have something that was aligned with creatively what I wanted to do and how I wanted to show up.
Hmm.
But that's as big as it was. So just kind of like a lifestyle thing, replace job income. Um, but in the last, year or so, I've kind of like, I feel like I accomplished that. And now I want to do something more, I guess, more meaningful. I don't know if ambition is the right word, but a little bit more ambitious. It's now more about like building a team around that, and sort of seeing what does that look like if it's 2 times bigger or 10 times bigger, or kind of how do you sort of have to change your mindset. And so this is like still like a growth process for me as well, that I'm sort of still in the midst of. But that's kind of like the new trajectory is, building community and building a team around that tool.
Right. And I think that that's a great direction for you, because you do have a bigger mission, and this is going to allow you to do that. And can you share like what that mission is that you have for coaches?
Um, so I mean, like I said, it started with just, I think, my idea of like what software does in general. And kind of what we all want to do with our work is sort of like clear that path between you having inspiration, you having like an inspired idea or a creative idea, and like seeing that realized in the world. But there's all this work between like having the idea and like birthing it into the world, and like a lot of that work is like core to the actual idea itself, and that's kind of what the process that you want to be engaged in. And a lot of it is just sort of the noise and the accidental complexity around like, you know, the world intruding into that space and how you have to manage all these other things. So it's like, it was initially just about like, you know, getting that space back and getting that clarity of focus back. And now I think it's still that, but there's also this idea of, you know, doing your best work and like thinking about what the next level is for you. What does it look like when you're sort of at your peak performance and at your when you're thinking bigger about your own mission? We kind of want to support you with that.
Awesome. And I think that's great, and I'm so glad that you're starting to ramp up the marketing and start growing this company, because it sounds like you've kind of flown under the radar a little bit. Like, the people that know you and love your software, and it's grown just by people sharing it, and now it's time to like start building real visibility. So that's exciting. I'm glad to hear that. And
Yeah.
and I'd love to help however I can in getting that message out there. So we might need to connect later. And so tell me, what advice would you give yourself, your starter self? Like, think what you know now that you wish you had known when you started off.
Yeah. I would just say like start sooner. Like there's no
Stop
reason not to
waiting.
start now. You know, exactly. You should never wait to do anything if it's
Right.
so important that it's like in your thoughts. You should be doing your best idea, like your most important idea of who you need to be. That should be what you're working on right now.
Hmm.
And then once you got that, you should start to think bigger about it, and which is still like a process I'm working on now. It's like, how can you challenge yourself to like, what does that look like if
Right.
it's bigger? But there's no reason to wait.
Great. That's really good advice. And so I'm kind of personally curious about what you were talking about before when you said you were doing travel blogging, and now I know you live overseas. So can you tell me kind of what that journey looks like? Like, what intrigues you about travel, and why are you living overseas versus I actually don't know where you're originally from, um, but tell me about that.
I didn't do travel blogging per se. I did more of a personal development
Hmm.
type of blogging that was kind of about, I set sort of challenges. So I sort of identified personal fears and then set challenges to kind of, you know, test those, or like, you know, yeah, challenge those fears and then do those things. But I had like in the whole space, there was a lot of travel bloggers and lifestyle design blogs that I kind of was just I enjoyed, you know, being connected in that space. I live in Thailand because this is where my family is. My wife is Thai. We have a daughter. Yeah, so this is just where I make my home.
Awesome. Great. And do you have any unusual non-business talents?
I was a somewhat accomplished musician in a former life. I worked in theater. I produced music for theater for several years, cabaret and some dramatic stuff and musicals, and yeah. So that was my big focus before I got more focused on business.
That's awesome. I would never have guessed that.
Yeah.
Very cool. I love learning like things about the people behind the businesses, because all we see is your software, all we see are the emails that we get are that are, you know, professional related, and we don't always know the people that are behind them. So I think that, learning those little tidbits is really, really interesting to me. What is your biggest fear?
Oh wow, man, that's a scary question. I'm scared of a lot of things still. I'm scared of vulnerability. Um, I'm scared of um, not living my best life and not kind of like showing up enough to, kind of not working hard enough at kind of being who I need to be in the world.
Hmm.
I'm scared of whatever is the opposite of freedom. Not having choice and not
Right.
having the ability to really sort of express yourself and kind of follow the path that I want to follow. That's a terrifying prospect.
Right. Yes, I totally hear you, and that I think that also says a lot about who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. So that's really big. And tell me about the moment that you felt that you had made it,
Huh.
when you knew that this
Um,
business was going to be successful.
right. I don't know if I've ever really had a moment where I feel like, I've made it. That's done. Yeah, I'm kind of arrived because I find everything is like, well, particularly in the sort of business I have, it's a lot of little bitty incremental things.
Hmm.
There aren't really like big steps. It's a lot of like piece by piece chipping away. I also just find that I think personally in general, I tend to set a goal, gradually work away towards that goal. But before I've got to that goal, I've set something beyond that. So
Hmm.
I never sort of feel like this is it. But I do remember like the day that I fired my client, or I quit the job that I had
Hmm.
before doing this business, just so I had like total all my time. Um, and even before I'd built anything, that felt like, oh yeah, like this is it. All I need to do now is not screw this up, and this is great.
That's almost like a I better make it moment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Good. I love hearing about that moment when people have left there, like they've burned the bridges, because it's usually like this coming of age moment, and we all go through it. So that's really cool. So I have a couple questions that I ask everyone on this podcast, so that we can get some cool resources from you, and just learn again a little bit more about you. So tell me, what is the your favorite tool that you've used to grow your business?
I use a tool in my business called Intercom, which is specific, like it's a SaaS tool for other SaaS businesses,
Hmm.
but we use it for it's our combined help desk and email marketing, and that's just how we like our main like touch point with our customers, and how we like communicate everything is through that software,
Hmm.
and it has this really tight integration with the software that we make for our coaches. So it's a great experience for the coaches, and it's really like ties everything together for us. So I don't know how useful that is for the audience of this podcast, but
That's really interesting. I've never heard
that's
of it. I'll have to look into it because it sounds intriguing. So
yeah.
cool. Thank you for sharing that. And what is your guilty pleasure? Bonus points if you have like a recipe or something
Uh,
you can share.
I have no recipe. I don't. I should. Cooking seems like something that I ought to be doing, but I don't. I I don't really do guilt. I've kind of worked at
Worked at not feeling
not
guilty.
not having that in my life. So I think if you're
So
gonna
what do you
enjoy
indulge
something,
in?
just sugar, anything anything sweet is kind of like a stress reliever.
And I
Yeah,
can't I can't say I blame you with the not cooking, because I think if I lived in Thailand, I would just be eating street food all the
right.
time,
Yeah,
because their
exactly.
food is incredible and it's so cheap. Um, and what is your favorite business book?
The one that's freshest in my memory is The One Thing by Gary Keller, I think, which I read just a few weeks ago. And this is like, like it says in the title, it's just about knowing your one thing. What's the most important thing right now in any particular context or in your life as a whole? And I mean, it's such an obvious thing, perhaps, but it's like it's a message that I really need to kind of be reminded of because I really tend to like have too many projects at once, too many tasks, and like the important things can just easily get buried
Hmm.
and get lost in that. So I'm really working right now at sort of just every day, like knowing what's the
What's the
one
one
task
thing?
I want to do today. So there's that. I'd also say the 4 Hour Work Week, Tim
Hmm.
Ferriss, which I read years and years ago, was probably the book that kind of like challenged my thinking in a way that sort of, I think that was one of the initial things that like set me on a new trajectory,
Hmm.
and sort of discovering a lot of stuff that came after that, in terms of like getting into business. But I think that book was something that really challenged me a lot and sort of made me think, well, there are other possibilities here.
Hmm. Yeah, that's actually the book that I read right before I quit my job. That was like the clincher.
Yeah.
So I hear you there. And last but not least, if you were a fairy tale character, what or who would you be?
Oh man. I I'm gonna have to go with the little engine that could. So,
That's a good one. I'm just picturing you on a train now.
yeah,
Just
I
chugging
think
along.
that's all there is. That's all it's about. It's just like keeping at it, and yeah, you have to try. You have to give it a go, and you have to keep going. And
Right.
yeah, anything else? That's the key.
Yeah.
A lot of other stuff is going to come up, but you just gotta
Right. I love that. It's
keep
funny because everything
trying.
you've said fits together so well between the one thing and the little engine that could and the finding your trajectory and your path. Like those are all interconnected and it says a lot about who you are. And it also says a lot about who you are because everything that you're creating for coaches is helping them kind of do those same things. Like you're kind of like you're doing a lot of the hard inner work and figuring out how to simplify things for other people, even though it's tough work for you. And you're creating this thing for coaches that is really allowing them to focus on the one thing that inspires them, the one thing that they have a mission about, and not having to worry about the little minor details of scheduling or getting contracts signed or just those things that doesn't really require their attention or genius. So that's cool. I love seeing when everything comes full circle and it's all, really a reflection of who you are.
Absolutely. No, that's well said.
So tell me, how do we learn more about your software? Do you have any like free gifts or anything for the listeners?
Oh, wow. Good question. I should have thought about this before we talked. Well, you can go to satoriapp.com to sort of check out the software. There's a free trial there. You can get 30 days free on the trial just to check it out. And I reckon Holly and I will chat more after this and work out a way for you to have maybe more than those 30 free days.
Awesome. We want
But
to do that.
we'll talk about those details.
Okay. And I will post the link and everything on the blog too. So if you didn't catch how to spell Satori or anything like that, it'll all be right there on the blog. So I just want to thank you so much for joining me today. This was so much fun. It was good getting to know you.
Likewise.
And for those that are listening, thank you for joining us again for Brand Tales. I hope you enjoyed the story of how one of the greatest brands came to be. And please join us again next week. And if you haven't already, make sure that you either subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or on the blog so that you don't miss a thing. And we will see you soon. Have an awesome day.